Security assessments exist to evaluate posture, but they do so with different goals, assumptions, and methods, which is why confusion between assessment types is so common. An organization may say it did a security assessment, yet what actually occurred could range from an automated scan to a full compliance audit, each producing very different insights. Assessments are not interchangeable because each one answers a different question about risk, exposure, and control effectiveness. Understanding the purpose behind each assessment type is essential for interpreting results correctly and for choosing the right approach at the right time. When assessments are aligned with their intended goals, they become decision support tools rather than check-the-box activities. Vulnerability scanning focuses on identifying known weaknesses using automated discovery techniques across systems, networks, and applications. These tools compare observed configurations, software versions, and behaviors against databases of known vulnerabilities and misconfigurations. The strength of scanning is breadth, because it can cover large environments quickly and consistently. Scans are especially effective at identifying missing patches, insecure configurations, and outdated components that are already understood risks. However, scans do not prove exploitability in a given environment, and they cannot determine business impact on their own. They're a starting point for understanding exposure, not a final judgment about risk. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to the CISS books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. The output of a vulnerability scan is a list of findings that must be validated and prioritized before action is taken. Automated tools are intentionally conservative, which means they often report potential issues that require human review to confirm relevance. False positives, environmental constraints, and compensating controls can all affect whether a finding represents real risk. Prioritization is critical because scans can produce hundreds or thousands of findings, far more than any team can address at once. Effective prioritization considers severity, exploitability, asset criticality, and exposure rather than relying solely on tool-generated scores. Without validation and prioritization, scanning results overwhelm teams and fail to drive meaningful improvement. Penetration testing takes a different approach by simulating exploitation to demonstrate how weaknesses can be combined to achieve real-world objectives. Rather than listing every possible vulnerability, penetration testing focuses on what an attacker could actually accomplish given the environment and constraints. Testers actively attempt to bypass controls, escalate privileges, and move laterally to reach defined goals such as data access or administrative control. This provides concrete evidence of impact, showing not just that a vulnerability exists, but why it matters. Penetration testing is narrower in scope than scanning, but deeper in execution, making it valuable for understanding true attack paths. A key characteristic of penetration testing is its emphasis on depth and chaining, where multiple weaknesses are combined to reach an objective. An individual issue that appears low risk in isolation may become critical when paired with another misconfiguration or trust relationship. Penetration testers explore these combinations, demonstrating how attackers think and operate rather than how controls are supposed to work. This narrative view of risk is one of the most valuable outputs of a pen test because it translates technical findings into business-relevant impact. However, penetration testing is not designed to find every vulnerability, and gaps should be expected outside the defined scope. Its value lies in realism, not completeness. Audits evaluate compliance and control effectiveness against defined criteria,
such as policies, standards, or regulatory requirements.
Unlike scans and pen tests, audits are not primarily concerned with exploitation, but with whether controls exist and operate as intended.
Auditors assess whether required processes are documented, followed, and evidenced over time.
This makes audits well suited for demonstrating assurance to regulators, customers, and leadership. Audits answer the question of whether the organization meets a defined set of expectations, not whether an attacker can break in.
Confusing audits with technical testing leads to misplaced confidence or unnecessary frustration.
Audit activities typically involve examining evidence, conducting interviews, and observing processes and configurations in practice. Evidence may include policies, logs, access records, change approvals, and prior assessment results. Interviews help auditors understand how controls are supposed to work and how they are applied in reality. Observations validate whether documented procedures align with actual behavior. This qualitative and procedural focus distinguishes audits from technical testing, which relies more on tools and hands-on activity. A strong audit depends on consistency and traceability rather than technical depth alone.
Internal assessments and external assessments serve different purposes, even when they use similar techniques. Internal assessments are primarily about improvement, helping teams identify weaknesses before they become incidents or external findings.
They allow for experimentation, deeper exploration, and candid discussion without the pressure of formal reporting. External assessments, whether audits or tests, are often about assurance, providing independent validation for stakeholders outside the organization.
The audience influences tone, scope, and documentation rigor.
Understanding this distinction helps teams set expectations and avoid treating every assessment as an adversarial exercise.
Scope definition is one of the most important steps in any assessment because it determines what systems are included, when testing occurs, and what techniques are allowed. A poorly defined scope leads to missed risk, operational disruption, or misleading conclusions. Scope should reflect the assessment's goal, focusing on assets and paths that matter most rather than trying to include everything. Time windows matter because testing during peak business hours carries different risk than testing during maintenance periods. Clear scope aligns effort with intent and protects both the organization and the assessors. Rules of engagement control risk to operations during testing activities, especially for penetration testing and aggressive scanning. These rules define what is permitted, what is prohibited, and how issues should be handled if systems become unstable. They may restrict certain techniques, limit denial of service testing, or require immediate notification if sensitive data is accessed. Rules of engagement are not about weakening assessments, but about balancing insight with operational safety. When rules are clear and respected, assessments can be thorough without causing unintended outages or data loss. Reporting differs significantly across assessment types because each produces different kinds of evidence. Vulnerability scans typically generate lists of findings with severity ratings and technical details. Penetration tests produce narratives that describe attack paths, exploited weaknesses, and achieved objectives. Audits map observed evidence to control requirements, highlighting gaps and compliance status. Understanding these differences prevents misinterpretation, such as expecting exploit proof from an audit or compliance conclusions from a scan. Good reporting matches the assessment method and communicates results in a way that supports decision-making.
Remediation planning is where assessment value is realized, converting findings into owned actions with deadlines and verification steps.
Without a remediation plan, assessments become static reports rather than drivers of improvement.
Effective remediation assigns clear ownership, prioritizes based on risk, and defines how fixes will be validated. It also considers root causes, ensuring that systemic issues are addressed rather than repeatedly patched. Planning turns assessment outputs into operational change, which is the real objective of evaluating security posture.
Retesting closes the loop by confirming that fixes are effective and updating the organization's understanding of risk over time. Retesting may involve rescanning systems, reattempting exploits, or reviewing updated evidence depending on the assessment type. This step verifies that remediation was implemented correctly and that no new issues were introduced. Over time, repeated assessment and retesting establish trends that show whether security posture is improving or stagnating. Without retesting, organizations rely on assumptions rather than evidence about the effectiveness of their efforts. Vulnerability scans, penetration tests, and audits each play a distinct role in assessing security posture, differing in purpose, evidence, and depth of validation. Scans provide breadth and speed, identifying known weaknesses that require prioritization and follow-up. Penetration tests provide realism, demonstrating how attackers can chain issues to achieve impact. Audits provide assurance, evaluating whether controls meet defined expectations and operate consistently. Used together and aligned with their proper goals, these assessment types complement rather than compete with each other. When organizations choose the right assessment for the right question, security evaluations become strategic tools rather than recurring sources of confusion. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.